Hey YouTube world, what's going on? Mark here from TST Industries, back in the garage. And as you can see behind me, we have a 2024 Honda XR150L. And in today's video, I will be guiding you through the installation process of our TST Axle Sliders. Now this is a pretty straightforward installation process. Some basic socket sets are all that's needed, along with a torque wrench and a ratcheting wrench. However, before we get to the installation process, I do want to preface this with a little bit of information that I feel like is important. This bike has been available for a couple of years now, but Honda North America has recently offered it to the US market. We have confidence that these parts will fit the previous year models. However, we do not have access to them in the North American market. So please shop with that discretion in mind. Secondly, these axle sliders you see here are actually kits that we have in stock, and they are designed for other models. This allowed us to offer a product right away without incurring the additional costs and therefore passing it on to the customer and offering a more expensive product. With that said, you should know that the front axle sliders that we are going to install are actually designed for the Honda Monkey, and with that they are only offered in a stainless steel option. Our Honda Grand ones will not fit, as the lower portion of the axle slider base does not clear the bottom of the fork leg. Moving on over to the rear, however, the sliders that we are going to install are actually designed for the Ninja 400 front forks. These are available in 3 different colors: red, silver, and black, and these are an aluminum slider with the Delrin puck. For the rear, we will also be including a lower profile axle nut seen here. All that said, we have verified fitment and functionality on this model. We know that these work, we have full confidence in them, and we are passing this information along to you to make you a more educated buyer. Now, with all that said, as I mentioned, this installation process is pretty straightforward, so let's go ahead and jump right in. You should have your bike on some sort of lift device. On this particular installation process, we actually have it on a center lift that is going to allow us to remove the front axle and the rear axle without the front collapsing or the rear collapsing. Now, focusing on the front, if we're looking at the brake lever side, we are looking at a 14mm axle bolt head. And on the clutch lever side, we are looking at a 19mm axle nut. Go ahead and install those sockets on the appropriate ratcheting wrenches, or a torque wrench if you have one. And let's go ahead and break this loose. Now, with the axle nut removed, we can actually remove the entire axle rod. Before we do that, let's go ahead and grab our kit. For the front, these axle sliders are not side specific, and we will begin by removing the Delrin pucks from the stainless steel bases. And then we will go ahead and, with a rubber mallet, we will gently tap the axle rod out of the axle. Now we will go ahead and grab one of the pucks, or one of the bases I should say, reinsert the axle, and then we will grab the other base and slide it over the end of the axle rod, and then tighten the axle nut down onto it, securing it in place. Once you have a few threads of engagement, you can go ahead and use a tool. This ensured that we didn't cross thread anything, and we will go ahead and begin tightening this down. Once that is bottomed out, you will actually want to go ahead and grab your torque wrench, and we will set it to the manufactured recommended torque values, which, per the Honda service manual, we have 44 Newton meters on the front axle nut. And with the axle nut torqued down, we can go ahead and reinstall the Delrin pucks we removed. And then with a 15mm socket, you can go ahead and just bottom it out. It is Delrin, again, stainless steel, so you don't need to go too crazy or torque it. It does have a little bit of preload with the way the system is designed, so just bottom it out and maybe go another 1/8 of the turn. With that complete, we can now go ahead and move on over to the rear and finalize this installation. Now coming on over to the rear of the bike, we will grab our tools. We will need a 24mm socket for the rear axle nut. And then for the axle bolt head, we will need a 17mm socket. Now it is important to note, this swing arm washer chain guide system is only found on this one side. We will keep that installed. And again, we are replacing the factory nut with ours, which is a lower profile one. So let's go ahead and remove this axle. Now, before we remove it fully, let's go ahead and grab our slider kit. Now, as you can see, these both came in the same set, but one has a notch in it and the other does not. The side with the notch will be the side that we install the replacement axle nut on, and the opposite side will go with the axle rod bolt head. Now we're going to go ahead and remove the axle, and it is important to note, as we remove the axle rod, these OEM chain guides will want to go ahead and fall out. The wheel may come misaligned. That is completely normal, and during the reinstallation process, we will line everything back up. If you need to use a punch or a small tool in order to give yourself additional leverage to remove the axle, it is completely safe to do so, as long as you tap gently. All right. Now we'll grab our sliders and pucks. We'll remove the pucks as we did on the front. And it is important to note that they are different, the bases that is. And you can see here that one base has a notch in it and the other is smooth. The side with the notch in it will go ahead and go over the axle rod bolt head, like so. So it's an easy identifier. This is the perfect diameter to get around the diameter of the axle rod, whereas the other one simply would not. So let's go ahead, now that the slider base is pre-installed on the axle, let's feed the axle rod back through the wheel assembly and then go ahead and install the other slider base on the opposite side. Now, as we get close, we do need to make sure that the wheel is aligned properly and the chain guide. There we are. And we will take our tool and gently tap the head of the axle, ensuring that it's sitting flush. Now, at this point, we can go ahead and reinstall the swing arm spacer, the base of our axle slider, and the new axle nut. Now, it is important to note there are tangs located on the outside of this axle nut, whereas the opposite side is completely flat. The flat side will go against the slider base. Now we will go ahead and grab our 24mm socket and our 17. Same steps as before on the front. Let's go ahead and just tighten these down now that we've caught a few threads of engagement by hand. Now that we have bottomed out, we can switch to our torque wrench. And on the rear of this bike, we will be torquing this axle nut down to, again, the factory recommended torque values, which can be found on the screen. In this case, for the rear, it is 93 Newton meters. And there we are. Now we can go ahead and grab our Delrin pucks. And just as we did on the front, a 15mm socket will be used in order to tighten these down. But before we do that, let's go ahead and thread these in by hand. And once we're bottomed out, we'll just go another 1/8 of a turn, 1/16 of a turn, And just like that, this installation is now complete. So as you can see, we've added some much needed crash protection to the front and rear axles of the XR150L, which we know this bike may see some rather unforgiving riding terrains, and if you ever find yourself meeting the asphalt or the ground, just know that these will help minimize any damage taken on in the event of a crash. Should mention that these pucks are replaceable, so if you do find yourself meeting the asphalt or the dirt and want to go ahead and replace just the pucks, we do have them available on our website. If you like these products, you want to check them out, be sure to stop by our website, tstindustries.com. The link to this exact kit can be found in the description below. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to give us a thumbs up, leave a comment, let us know where you're watching from. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn the notification bell on to stay up to date with all the new and exciting videos we've got going on. And lastly, don't be afraid to stop by our social media pages, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all username TST Industries. For now, this has been Mark in the TST Garage, and we'll catch you guys next time.